Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good morning to everyone. Welcome to the fourth session of the Low Carbon Cities webinar series held in conjunction with IGEM 2020 virtual event. I hope everyone has had the opportunity to visit all the amazing virtual booths and has the opportunity to participate in all the conferences that's going to be held throughout the whole week. But for this morning, we want to focus our attention on low carbon cities. As many of you may know, cities around the world are responsible for up to 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Emissions from the energy that powers our cities, emissions from the transportation that we use to move people around, and emissions from the waste that we send to landfills. We have to realize and understand that our day-to-day activities are contributing to these emissions, and that we, yes, you and I, have the choice and the power to make a difference. Today we will hear from 11 distinguished speakers from the United Kingdom, Denmark and Malaysia as they share with us their experiences, knowledge and insight on how we can transform our cities into low carbon cities. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee and be inspired to start taking action in your own way as we collectively move towards a low carbon future. To kick things off, may I introduce Mr. Guillaume Johnston, who is the Head of Global Partnerships at Connected Places Catapult UK. The Connected Places Catapult operates at the intersection between public and private sectors and between local government and transport authorities as they focus on growing businesses with innovation in mobility services and the built environment that enable new levels of physical, digital and social connectedness. Speaking today on London's ultra-low emission zone, please welcome Mr. Johnston.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's really good to be here at the Low Carbon Cities New Normal webinar organized by the Malaysian New Technology and Climate Change Center. As I can see, it's a really interesting session today with participants from different parts of the world, and I hope I can share some of the expertise here from London. So my name is Guilherme Johnston. I'm the head of global partnerships at Connected Places Catapult, and I'm speaking from my living room. I wish I was there in Malaysia in person, but hopefully we can make this work from home. So I'll try to share my my screen here so you can see the presentation. So there you go. And here it's my presentation. And as said, as I mentioned before, I'll try to focus on the London ultra low emission zone and some other activities from London related to low carbon and how to improve air quality in the city. First of all, I'd just like to briefly introduce you to Connected Places Catapult, which is the organization I am currently working. And we were created by the UK government about 6 years ago as an innovation agency aiming at improving prosperity, innovation, and productivity in the UK economy. We are neutral and an expert convener of innovative technologies on urban innovation and mobility. And we operate at the intersection between public and private sector, between local and central government. So we work together with cities, we work together with UK central government, and also we work with companies, big and small, helping to improve the ecosystem of urban innovation and urban mobility. We are the UK reference on intelligent transport systems. We have developed test beds for new technologies on mobility as a service, for example, autonomous vehicles and other mobility and urban innovation related technologies. So we deliver innovative projects and try to connect the now and the next, the now and the future. But we don't work only in the UK. We are quite active internationally as well. So as you can see, we have delivered up to now 25 projects globally, helping cities and countries around the world with to improve their urban innovation strategies, urban innovation technologies, innovation locations, mobility as a service, intelligent transport systems, and a series of other activities. So, for example, we have the delivered projects in Brazil, South Africa, India, United Arab Emirates, China, and Malaysia. Of course, we have so far delivered 2 projects in Malaysia, one in Melaka on data, and another one in Johor in partnership with Iskandar Regional Development Authority, helping the region of Johor with low carbon transport, actually. So quite connected to what I'm presenting today. And right now we're also delivering a new project in the Klang Valley on mobility as a service. So Malaysia is a great place for us to be working with, and I'm really happy to be speaking with you all here today. We also have developed something called the City Typology Dashboard, which is a tool that we have worked with 500 cities around the world and delivered connection with 65 indicators, 175 data points to understand the urban landscape around cities globally. So we're quite actively helping companies from the UK and companies from other countries also to select and identify which are the best places for them to be working with and doing business and connecting UK with local urban innovators. So this was just a brief overview of who we are and some of our activities. But I'm here today to speak specifically on air quality. As you may know, air quality is one of the massive issues today, one of the biggest environmental risks to health, and it may damage every organ in the body. And according to World Health Organization, 9 out of 10 people nowadays breathe air that exceeds legal standards. So it's definitely a massive problem. It's a global issue, and that needs addressing. It's an emergency. Air quality is an emergency that needs to be addressed at really high level. And also, as we're living through these pandemics, there is growing evidence that dirty air worsens infections and death rates from coronavirus. So as you can see, cities that have really bad air quality, there is a connection with increased number of worsening conditions when people are hit with coronavirus. And it's also part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to help cities tackle this massive issue of air quality. And of course, road transport, it's a massive contributor for that. And as you can see, air pollution is the silent killer. Only in Southeast Asia, around over 2 million people have died last year alone from connection from diseases connected to air quality. So it's not a joke. It's clear something that needs addressing. And in Malaysia, it's not different from other places. They are there is quite massive issues that need to be addressed. And going back to the UK, to London specifically, London also was, and still is, but was even worse before, quite affected by bad air quality. So I think it was one of the worst cities in Europe with air quality and not compliance with European regulations in what relates to air quality. And because of that, that the mayor of London decided to implement a series of measures, with including the ultra low emission zone, which is quite a flagship action implemented last year and now being delivered quite successful, as I'll be able to show here some examples of what has been done. And as globally, thousands of people in London also die every year because of bad air quality. And around 450 schools in London were in areas exceeding legal air quality level. So this is a massive problem, imagine for kids living in London, they had to go through bad air quality since early age, with the potential to cause massive problems for their, for their health. And this is something that had to be done and needs drastic measures to address that. So the ultra low emission zone was created to reduce these emissions, of course, protect children, and reduce the risk of illness, heart disease, and other connections in adults, and of course improve the health of people. So this is why it was created. So as you can see here, the ultra low emission zone was established where currently London also has the so-called congestion charge, which was also created about 20 years ago and quite successful to reduce traffic. However, pollution was not reduced in the center of London. So you can see the area now where it's been implemented, and most vehicles drive into the zone. Now they have to comply with the regulations related to the ultra low emission zone. So, for example, cars that did not comply with this regulation, they need to pay, in addition to the congestion charge, £12.50 just to enter in the area. And if they don't comply and if they continue to not respect this legislation, they can pay up to a fine quite high as well. And lorries, they have to pay £100, so it's quite high, the amount that they have to pay. And if they don't comply, they have a fine of up to £1,000 that they must pay. So it's quite massive, the needs and the penalties that people have to face if they don't comply with the legislation. And of course, the money that is raised through these charges is 100% reinvested into London's transport system. However, London don't want to stay only at this city center. It will be expanded to other areas of the city. As you can see, London metropolitan area is quite large with 33 boroughs. So from October 2021, the ultra low emission zone will be expanded to these other areas of the city, as you can see here in the map. So this will cover 3.8 million of London's residents. So it's quite a large area, quite dense populated area. So the benefits will be also quite high for London's inhabitants. So the ultra low emission X, that's how we call it, because it's a larger area that will be included, is a key part of the UK government's plan for London to comply with air pollution limits by 2025 or sooner. So London managed to reduce, the levels of pollution, but London wants to be by 2025 compliant with international legislation related to air pollution. So it's quite a large task, but it's doable. And as you can see with the what has been achieved so far, it can be achieved. And this is quite interesting, particularly as we are talking about COP26 in Glasgow next year. So since the introduction of the ultra low emission zone, there is a constant fall in nitrogen dioxide levels in the city of London, as you can see. So even before lockdown, of course, lockdown caused by COVID helped for sure. But even before, there was this trend of reducing emissions. And as you can see, it's quite a sharp decrease from 2019 to 2020. So air pollution in London has plunged since the introduction of the ultra low emission ultra low emission zone for sure, and 94% reduction in the number of people living in areas with illegal levels of illegal nitrogen dioxide. And the number of schools in these areas, as I said at the beginning, also dropped by 97%. So it's massive what has been achieved. And so additional key impacts so far, there has been 71% reduction in the number of older, more polluting, no compliant vehicles detected in the specific zone. So a reduction of 44,100 vehicles on an average day. So again, massive reduction on the number of cars and pollution there. And also 96% increase in vehicles that are compliant with the legislation. So again, very large change there, and as you can see, something concrete that can help with air quality. And 79% compliance rate in January 2020. So also quite interesting. As you know, this was introduced in April 2019. And improving air quality inequality. As I said, emissions reduced and related to road transport down 31%. So of course, London's ultra low emission zone. It's not only the only initiative being developed in London related to air quality. It's part of a larger program and a massive priority to reduce bad air quality in London. So there are massive support to cleaner vehicles, air quality monitoring and mapping, school air quality audits are being delivered as well, low emission bus zones in the city, EV infrastructure developed, and also air quality fund, which is helping projects by London boroughs with 22 million pounds. So all these actions together are supposed to help London to achieve its target by be compliant by 2025 with air quality legislation. And in addition to that, of course, COVID-19 has also brought to the attention that there is the need to turn the city into more walkable, more cyclable, and this is also being implemented now, and with the idea of reducing emissions and also really trying to avoid people to use private cars after after the city backs to normal. So this is quite important as well, because we really don't want to go back to people using private cars. We really want people to walk, to cycle, and to be really delivering and being part of a new way of new relationship with the city, I would say. So that's all I can say for now. I know we don't have much time, but I hope it was helpful. And I'm definitely available to continue our conversation via email. You have my email here, and also the website of Connected Places Catapult if you want to learn more about our work. So thank you very much for hosting me, and I wish you a great continuation of the event. So thank you again, and yeah, have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. That was very interesting. In Malaysia, we have not yet reached the level of the ultra-low emission zone as per in the UK, but under the Low Carbon Cities 2030 Challenge program, we are working with local authorities to establish low carbon zones within the city centre. Within these zones, local authorities are encouraged to carry out building energy efficiency initiatives, build cycling lanes and pedestrian walkways, facilitate recycling, collect rainwater, and plant more trees. We hope that this may be the stepping stone for cities in Malaysia to one day have their very own ultra-low emission zone. Moving on to the next presenter, Mr. Nicholas Rimbo, the APAC Sales and Operations Manager of Telensa. Telensa is focused on building data-driven cities through a smart streetlight infrastructure. Streetlight infrastructure provides place, power, and connectivity where people live, work, and travel. This makes street lights an efficient means to collect, protect, and apply data to enhance city life. To share with us on the power of street lights, please welcome Mr. Nicholas.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Nicholas. I'm looking after the Asia Pacific region for Telensa, and today I'm going to be talking to you about smart lighting. Before I jump in the detail of what smart lighting is, I'd like to say a few words about the company. So Telensa is a UK company. We have our headquarters based in Cambridge in the UK, and we have offices in the US and in Melbourne in Australia. We have been for several years now named the world leader in connected street lighting. We have deployed more than 1.8 million streetlights around the world, and we are working with more than 400 cities. And we have been operating in the field of smart lighting for more than 10 years now. We have strategic partnerships with a very wide range of companies, including Microsoft and Samsung, which are partners that we are collaborating with to create smarter applications and smarter services, typically in smart lighting, but also in smart city applications. As far as the Asia Pacific region is concerned, we have been working for a number of years around that region. We have a very wide range of deployments across the region, including in Australia and New Zealand, but also in Asia, and we do have existing deployments in Malaysia. So I will be talking about smart lighting and just run through the basics of how smart lighting actually works and what are the benefits of such an application. So in a nutshell, smart lighting is usually composed of three main components. So we have usually a sensor or a control that is going to be connected to the light. There is a range of controls available, and the way you install will depend on the type of light you have. What you see here is what we call a NEMA version of the product, which is sort of a plug and play version with a socket available on the luminaire, and our control just plug in and twist locking on top of the luminaire and operating the light. Now, obviously, those controls are bringing smart to the light, and what they do is basically connect to the light and then collect information, allow control of the light, and collect data, and all of that is done through radio frequency, so wirelessly, and the device is connecting through what we call a base station, which is basically a network device, and the base station is then collecting the information from all the devices across the network and back to a central system. So that's the three main components of the system. Talking about the device itself, we obviously have a range of products available that can be used in different situations. So I've mentioned the NEMA version, which is the sort of twist and lock control that can easily be installed on luminaires with a NEMA socket, but we have other versions of the products that can be used if there is no NEMA socket. Typically what we have here is a conduit that can be connected directly with the wires connected to the driver, and we have the two-part telecell that can typically be connected within the luminaire and with the antenna for the device being installed outside of the luminaire. We have a post-op version, which is a product that is mostly used in North America for very specific applications for decorative luminaire, but it's basically another variant with an external antenna. Now, in terms of the device itself, it's been designed with efficiency in mind and simplicity for our customers. So obviously there is radio embedded in the control. One of the main aspects of the device is that it's designed to have a low power consumption, and we have managed to maintain the power consumption of the device at 0.7 watt, which is usually under most of the other devices on the network in terms of power consumption. And the reason for this is that the device is designed to communicate when it's important to communicate, so it doesn't broadcast information all the time. It's available to be controlled, and it's reporting data on a need basis. The device, all those devices here obviously include a revenue grade metering chip. And what we have found through experience with our customers is that the metering chip has an accuracy of around 0.5 or 0.6%. We are currently working on getting that accuracy certified by a third-party laboratory to make sure that what we say on the paper is actually recognized by the industry. So I was talking about simplicity earlier, and one of the things we really have designed in our services and products is simplicity. We want to make sure that the product works and that it's easy to install, it's easy to maintain, and it makes life easier for our customer. Without this, smart lighting isn't really smart if it becomes a burden. So with that in mind, first, lighting is the priority. So the control is designed to be working even without the network. So in general, the devices will communicate with a base station, but if the base station stops working or there is no network coverage in an area, then the light is going to switch on and off correctly using GPS and time-based settings and triggers so that the light actually keeps switching on and off at the appropriate time. Back to simplicity, we have this concept of self-commissioning. So we want it to be very simple and for installation teams to just have to go on site, install the device on top of the light and move on to the next slide. And that's what the system does. Basically, the telesale will automatically create a list of base stations available for communication, and it will pick up the best base station available and connect to the back office and to the central system through that base station. We also have resilience in the way the telesale is going to work. And what this means is that if one of the base station available becomes unavailable, the system is automatically going to switch to the next best base station to continue its operation normally. What this means is that basically there is no need for a specialist to go on site and perform radio-related commissioning. Everything can be done with a standard installation team, so it's really simple, and there is no complexity in the commissioning of the network because we are working on something that we call a star topology network. So there is no complexity. There isn't the complexity of the mesh network typically, where you will have devices communicating between one and another to communicate back to the central system. So the network topology is very simple. Other aspects of the devices, so the size of the device is very small, so typically will be just about a few centimeters high, so it's not going to pop out on top of the light or at the bottom of the light. It won't be an eyesore. It's fairly discreet and very similar to the size of a standard photocell. There is a GPS chip in the device. What this means is that this is used for several purposes. One of them is what I was mentioning earlier, which is that the device is going to work on its own even without network, and it's going to do this thanks to the GPS. It will know where it is in the world, it will know what time it is, and it will use internal information to define when is the sunset, when is the sunrise, and use that information to switch on and off if there is no network. But in addition to this, obviously the GPS information is reported back to the central system, so it will appear automatically in the software with the correct location without having to input manually the information in the system. Back to the installation side of things. So we have worked over the past few years on an installation app that is coming with the system, and we have a near field communication interface, or NFC, that is available on the side of the device and obviously on the handheld device. And we use this typically to facilitate the installation process and the recording of information when the installation happens. So typically an installation team will go up the light, install the telesale, and use the handheld device to scan for information from the telesale and record this directly in the system. So it's sort of a simplifying further the mechanism of installation. And the final function I would like to cover is what we call the relay function. So I've mentioned very briefly that the topology our network is designed around is what we call a star topology. So devices are typically connecting directly to a base station, but we do have a function in the system to make those devices relay. And what this means is that when we have difficulties at the edge of the coverage to reach the final few telecells, in some cases due to obstructions or due to topography or any other constraint, we can set up the device as a relay, and it will pick up the information from nearby telecells and relay that information back to the central system. So it is sort of what we call an edge mesh. It's really just for one jump, so we can't have multiple telecells relaying data. It really has to be from one telecell to another one and back to the central system. But it's usually a way to make it easier to catch those last few lights that might be isolated or hidden behind obstructions. So it's not a line of sight network. It does go through obstacles and through buildings, and we have been deploying the system in very dense urban environments. But in the case where the combination of obstacles, of long range, and so on, reduce the signal to a level that is too low for the telecell to connect, that's where the relay function is interesting to pick up the last few telecells. So I'll move on to the base station. So base station is following a specification we call ultra narrowband technology that we call ultra narrowband. The advantages of ultra narrowband are multiple, but I suppose two main advantages are going to be the range and the resilience to interference. The range we can get with base station will vary depending on the environment. So typically in a standard environment, we will see that the range is going to be 10 to 15 kilometers, but we can reach much longer range if we position the base station in optimal conditions. So typically on top of a building, on top of a hill, we can reach something like 40 to 50 kilometers. And in more dense and urban environments, we will see that the range is reduced, and typically we will see something around 3 to 5 kilometers. But the capacity of the base station is fairly high, so we have designed the product to have up to 5,000 lights connected to it, and the combination of the range and the capacity of the base station means that we generally have a lot less devices that need to be deployed, and it makes the installation and the maintenance of a smart lighting network much more efficient and much less costly. So I've mentioned this just now. The higher range of UNB means that you have less devices deployed, but we also can add a lot of resilience and redundancy in the radio planning. So that's one of the steps we are taking at the beginning of a deployment, and we have overlapping coverage between the base station to make sure that if one of the base station is going down, other base stations are going to pick up the slack and maintain connection with the devices. What we have observed in projects in real life is that mesh gateways, although they have a range that has increased over the past few years, still have a much lower range compared to UNB, and we expect for a mesh network that the requirement in terms of devices is going to be 10 to 20 times more. It means more devices to install. It also means a more complex network to commission and maintain. So in general, we see that the UNB networks are much easier and simple to deploy. So I'm just going to show a few screenshots to demonstrate what we do when we are planning for a deployment. So this is a screenshot of the application, and what we see here is one of the base station showing up on the system, and we can see all the dots in green are connected to that base station. Everything else in turquoise are connected to other base stations. And what we can see is that the range here, as shown here on the left-hand side, the range from that base station to the edge of the region, and typically this light here is going to be about 6.4 kilometers. So you can expect around 12 to 15 kilometers across the region. And the second thing we can see is that there are devices connected from really far away. We have obviously a higher density here, but we really have devices connected across the region. So when we add the other base stations, so we have 6 for that specific customer in the UK, we can see that most of the base stations are going to have individual lights across the region that will connect to them even if they are far away. And this is what we mean by resilience and redundancy. Even though we have deployed a base station in a specific location and there is a higher density of connectivity around them, they are actually able to see lights across the region and provide redundancy if another base station is going down. So obviously, once those two components have been deployed, the device and the base station, it gives access to a whole range of features for the customer. So obviously, we have access to what we call programs, so typically dimming programs, control programs, all of those defining the behavior of the light when it's going to switch on or dim. We can also customize what data is collected and when. So there's a whole range of information that can be collected by the system to then inform the decision of the customer as far as the street lighting network is concerned. It's obviously scalable, so we have networks from very small size to very larger size. We currently operate the largest street lighting network in the world with 300,000 devices deployed at this stage. So it works with small and large networks. And we have integration available at different levels. So typically we have APIs and bespoke integrations to integrate with asset management systems typically, so that the data can actually flow from our system to a third-party system. Hosting is very flexible. We can host the system ourselves, but we can also host it in third-party service providers or even on-premise when required by the customer. Now, in terms of the business case, it's quite simple. We have two main points where the system is going to pay for itself. So we have the component of saving energy, which can be done through a range of methodology, but typically dimming program is the most important. And we have savings on the maintenance. So typically removing the need to have nighttime patrols to try and find lights. The system is automatically going to report data, and the operator is going to be able to send teams directly to the location where a fault has happened, rather than having to try to find it or wait for someone to report it. Now, obviously, lighting is just one component when it comes to smart lighting. Once the lighting becomes smart, there is an opportunity to use other systems to connect with the smart lighting and create further benefits. And one of the applications we have created with our system is what we call traffic adaptive lighting. This is a combination of traffic monitoring data, which is collected by a system, reported through the cloud, and then connecting through our system to the lighting, and enabling a dynamic change in the lighting output based on the traffic volume. And we have an example here that I will really talk about very briefly, but it's a customer we have in the UK that has implemented this, and they have realized an additional 23% savings on top of the savings that they had done through the LED upgrade and through the use of standard dimming controls. So they have been able to connect those two applications to bring further savings to the city. And finally, another very important side of a network in general is the ability to scale. As I mentioned earlier, we have a very large number of customers with smaller size network, but we have also very significant networks that we are managing through our application. And typically we have 4 networks under management with more than 100,000 lights. So this is just showing that the application actually scales very well and that it can be used by large cities and large utilities around the world to manage their network more efficiently. So this is a final slide about Georgia Power. So this is the largest network around the world. What you see here is just an actual screenshot of the application in our system, showing the network in Georgia, in the US. And what you see here is the scale of that network. And just a small inset here, zooming in on the eastern part of Georgia, we have a very large density of lights, and this is just showing you the scale. So Georgia are using this system to manage lighting across their network, and they're collecting information about energy, about the function of the network, and obviously about faults to better manage the lighting service, and typically use that information also for billing and invoicing purposes. Well, thanks for taking the time to listen to this presentation. If you have any question, please feel free to reach me on my email and visit our microsite on the events website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. That was truly enlightening. Over the years, we have had many people ask, how does a smart city relate to a low-carbon city? Well, I believe Mr. Nicholas has shown that a solid smart city infrastructure can provide the necessary data needed to make plans and decisions that can help reduce carbon emissions, mitigate and adapt to climate change, and ultimately create a conducive living environment for all. Low carbon is smart, and smart is low carbon. Next up, we have Mr. Klaus Bondam, the CEO of the Danish Cyclist Federation. The Danish Cyclist Federation works to make the bicycle the natural, safe, everyday choice for all, and to harness the bicycle to bring about a healthier, more sustainable world. With more than 1 million Danes use their bicycles for daily transport, Mr. Klaus Bondam will be sharing with us his insights on Copenhagen, a city of cyclists. Please welcome Mr. Bondam.
Hello, my name is Klaus Bondam. I'm the CEO of the Danish Cyclist Federation, and I am very happy to be able to give a small presentation during your conference here on Copenhagen, the city of cyclists, as a part of your conference on low carbon cities new normal, make it a reality. And by introducing more everyday cycling, you can for sure make it a reality. Amongst many other things, I have been a member of the Copenhagen City Council for almost 10 years. And I served 5 years as mayor for the technical and environmental administration. And I was at that time called the bicycle mayor. And I introduced a lot of ambitious policies on improving and integrating everyday cycling much more in our capital, but also introduced a policy together with the Lord Mayor and the rest of the City Council to make Copenhagen the first carbon neutral city, the first carbon neutral capital in the world by 2025. And we are definitely moving in the right direction. And of course, cycling and other sustainable and active modes of transportations are a part of that. I think that this quote from a Danish member of the Danish Parliament, Mr. Jørgensen, I think puts it quite right. The world has 3 major problems: the climate, the congestion, and the obesity epidemic. One could also say the lifestyle disease epidemic. The bicycle is the answer to all 3 of them. This is, of course, not entirely true, because the bicycle is not the entire total answer, but it is a part of the solution, and I will try for the next 10 minutes to elaborate a little bit over that. When I was a politician myself, I paid a lot of attention to making it very clear to myself that I did not do politics for myself or for today or tomorrow. I did politics for the future generations, for the children of today. I had kind of a motto that said that one of my ambitions was to make sure that when we passed on the city to the next generation, it would be in a better shape than it was when we took it over. So it's quite interesting to actually ask the next generation what they think about cycling, and think about these quotes that I'm showing now in connection to the climate issue, the congestion issue, and the lifestyle disease issue. When I ride my bike, I get to ride to new places quickly, says Vilja, who's 6 years old, and she's of course completely right. We know that a lot of time in our cities are wasted in in car queues, and if we want to be efficient and productive societies, it is a good idea to introduce modern-day cycling. Bicycles are environmentally friendly, says Tim here, and we know that the transport sector contributes to around 1/3 of the total emissions. We also, all of us, are in the process of changing a lot of our fossil fuel driven cars to electric cars. But electric cars creates exactly the same amount of congestion as fossil fuel driven cars. And we know that, at least in Denmark, 50% of all car rides are 10 kilometers or less. Actually, 30% of the car rides are 5 kilometers or less. We also know that 47% of all people who are employed on the work market, they have 10 kilometers or less going to and from work. So there's a big potential to introduce everyday cycling as a part of an environmentally friendly and sustainable future in our cities. This young lady here knows, of course, what it's about. Cycling helps you to wake up on sleepy morning. It actually makes us much more efficient and much more productive, and that is a good thing for our societies. As mentioned before, we do spend outrageous amounts of time being stuck in car queues, and it's a good idea to actually try to see whether the introduction and the implementation of safe, secure, segregated bicycle infrastructure can make some people who are stuck in car queues, whether it can make them to choose another mode of transportation. I love to ride my bike. It is so hyggeligt. Hyggeligt is a completely untranslatable Danish word. It means kind of cozy, but it actually, by introducing more active mobility like cycling, it does create an urban environment where we're able to have eye-to-eye contact with each other, where we can have small conversations and dialogue in the streets, which actually creates a very nice, livable urban environment. A lot of societies, and I'm pretty sure that it goes for your society also, does have a lot of challenges with people not being relaxed, anxiety, and stress. And we know that being physically active, being in fresh air, is a very good medicine, if you can put it that way, for that. And my own favorite, I love to ride my bike. I have no idea why, says this young lady of 6 years old. And that is probably because a lot of children basically started their life on a bicycle. In a lot of Danish cities, also Copenhagen, you see a lot of children being driven around by their parents like this, or in a cargo bike like this one. 30% of all Copenhagen families with 2 kids or more have the cargo bike as their primary mean of transportation. When children are about 1.5 to 2 years old, they can start by playing around on we call them walking bikes, and that of course has to take place in secure playgrounds, in secure environments, and of course under the instruction of adult people. But if you start so early on, there's no doubt that it's much easier for you to learn to use the bicycle later. And we always say in Denmark that an early cyclist is an ongoing cyclist. When children are around the age of 6, 7 years old, they should be able to cycle by themselves of course in the company of grown-ups, and of course also taking care that it is in street environments that does feel safe for children to cycle in. In Copenhagen, you see a lot of these cycling families where the entire family is using the bicycle as their primary mean of transportation during the day, going to work, going to kindergarten, going to school, doing their shopping. And that includes this family here, their Royal Highnesses, the Crown Prince Frederik and his wife, the Crown Princess Mary, here taking their twins around in the cargo bike in the city of Copenhagen. And this is a very good signal that there is no social stigma in cycling. Cycling is basically for everybody. Rich people, poor people, tall people, young people, men, women, everybody can be up there on their bicycle. And the Crown Prince couple is a very good example of that. I will now give you a little bit of statistics on everyday cycling in the city of Copenhagen. First of all, it's important to understand that cycling is not a new thing in Copenhagen. Cycling has historically, for the last 120 years, been a part of the everyday mobility in our city. Due to Danish tax rules, cars are quite expensive to buy. There's a lot of taxes on cars. So for a lot of low-income and middle-income people, the bicycle was by far the most convenient mode of transportation. Today, 49% of all workplaces and study places within the municipality of Copenhagen are reached by bicycle every single day throughout the year. And if you ask the Copenhageners why they use the bicycle, well, here is the answer that you get. It's easy, it's fast, and it's good for exercise. It's not because they are especially eco-friendly, but of course by cycling so much, they do contribute a lot to the lowering of CO2 emissions in our city. You can actually see here over a 10-year period that the number of Copenhageners who use the bicycle going to work or education every day has actually risen with almost 10% over the last 10 years. And the number of people who are getting seriously injured is falling. The satisfaction is going up. And that is both the satisfaction on the state of the cycle tracks, the cycling culture's impact on urban life, and satisfaction with bicycle parking. Why do I show you these numbers? Well, because numbers are always good when you're dealing with politicians, when you need investment for bicycle infrastructure, that you can actually see that there is something happening. And even though you don't see it from day to day, but seeing a development from 2008 to 2018 actually shows that over a 10-year period, there has been quite a strong development. And then you suddenly understand as a politician that it's a good thing to invest. And even looking back in the past, you can see how the development of bicycle tracks has been over the last century. So my most important advice is basically to be patient, because it does take time to implement a well-connected, safe, secure, segregated bicycle infrastructure, as you see in Copenhagen. But don't forget that it's a damn good investment. These are numbers from the Danish Ministry for Transport that says that for every single kilometer we exchange the car with the bicycle in the city, we actually improve the health condition and prolong lifetime to a value that can be measured to almost $1 per kilometer. So you can understand that with that amount of cycling that you see in Copenhagen, that it contributes a lot. We have a lot of other calculations on this, and this is something that also can persuade a lot of politicians that these are investments with a very high return of investments. So I like to go along with this Swedish former Minister for Environment and Urban Development, where she says that it is time to take the car down from the pedestal and treat it as a mean of transport, just like any other mean of transport. So the point is create a democratic approach to everyday cycling in your city. Make sure that it's safe for children and elderly people also to use the bicycle, and you actually create a very good urban environment. So just to round off, understand that the cycling is not only about creating a low carbon city. It is of course about climate change, but it's also about public health. It's also about efficiency. It's about good, sound socio-economic. It's about urban life. And it is, at least for me personal, mostly about freedom. And as mentioned before, it is damn good value for money. I will finally recommend you to check in on the Cycling Embassy of Denmark's recommendation. You can find them on cyclingsolutions.info, where you have a lot of useful information and best practice stories from a lot of Danish practitioners, from consultancy companies, civil society organizations like myself, politicians, and municipalities. Do also follow the Cycling Embassy of Denmark on social media. Finally, I just want to say thank you very much for your attention. It has been a privilege speaking to you. I hope that you succeed in all your ambitions on making a low carbon city a reality. And as we say in Denmark, pedal power, yes please. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a good conference. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. Bondam. That was inspiring. Seeing the next generation of Danes really embracing and enjoying cycling is wonderful. I think a key takeaway is that more than half of the people surveyed choose to cycle because it was easier. This points to the infrastructure of a city. If we make our cities conducive for cycling, I think people will cycle. As cycling is gaining popularity here in Malaysia, many cities are looking to provide appropriate infrastructure to facilitate cycling. Next up, we have Mr. Logan Chetty, the Marketing and Regional Business Development Manager of Rockwool Malaysia. Rockwool makes and supplies a full range of smart and sustainable insulation products for the construction and process industries based on innovative stone wool technology. This morning, Mr. Logan will be speaking about how insulation in buildings can help contribute towards a low carbon and resilient city. Please welcome Mr. Logan Chetty.
Hi everyone, my name is Logan Chetty and I'm the Senior Marketing and Business Development Manager for Rockwool Malaysia. I've been in the insulation industry for 10 years with experience in the domestic and international market. Let's start today's webinar, Contribution of Buildings Towards Low Carbon and Resilient Cities. Rockwool. It's a company which has been around for a very long time. Started in 1937 with headquarters in Denmark. A lot of people aren't familiar with this. The original patent dates back to 1937 back in Copenhagen, Denmark. Rockwool is a company with 83 years history with 60 years of product data. We are present in 39 countries with 46 manufacturing facilities and 11,700 employees worldwide. Today, half of all people in ASEAN live in urban areas, and an additional 70 million people are forecast to live in ASEAN cities by 2025. The rate of urbanization across ASEAN will continue to increase exponentially in the future. In 2017, approximately 75% of Malaysia's population lived in urban areas and cities. This puts Malaysia as one of Southeast Asia's most urbanized country. The metropolitan area of Greater Kuala Lumpur had a population of more than 7 million in that year, making it Malaysia's biggest urban area. These people, like all the rest of us, will spend 90% of their time indoors, resulting in building emitting huge amount of carbon dioxide. Building emissions, as typically measured, are a combination of two things. First is a day-to-day energy use known as the operational carbon emissions that comes from powering lighting, heating, and cooling. Second is the amount of carbon generated through manufacturing building materials, transporting materials to construction sites, and the actual construction process, what's known as the embodied carbon of a building. What can we do to further cut down on our energy consumption so that carbon emissions are reduced? Since most building-related carbon emissions come from energy use, the first and easiest step in addressing emissions is reducing consumption through energy-efficient design. Most important psychological requirement of human health and general well-being is ability of human body to maintain constant internal temperature. It is possible to minimize the rigorous effect of thermal discomfort by judicious choice of orientation, layout plan, and choice of building materials. In summary, building represents a critical piece of low-carbon future. Buildings offer immediately available, highly cost-effective opportunities to reduce energy demand while contributing towards low-carbon and resilient cities. As such, low-carbon city is a sustainable urbanization approach that focuses on mitigating the carbon footprint of cities through minimizing or abolishing the use of energy source from fossil fuel. But is it enough? Shouldn't a city be more than low carbon? Should it not also be resilient? Especially in light of the ongoing pandemic hardship and the new norm we live in, should we not expect cities to be low carbon as well as resilient? What does resilient look like? Urban resilience has been defined as a city's ability to bounce back after experiencing hardships. These hardships can be from the effect of climate change, such as natural disasters, pandemic outbreaks, noise and air pollution, and many other stress linked to living in densely populated environment. In fact, many of the world's major cities are already leading the fighting against climate change by reducing the carbon footprints, but increasing resilience goes much further than just preparing for a natural disaster and implementing low carbon measures. It is about providing a safe and healthy existence for all the citizens while limiting the impact on the planet's resources. Therefore, building environment plays an important role in increasing resilience in cities. Resilient buildings and infrastructures have a pivotal role to play in helping citizens weather impacts of climate change, pandemics, and other urban stresses. For example, in the new norm of COVID-19 pandemic, people now spend more time indoors, having to change how they work, live, and play. Buildings therefore should be a safe and comfortable place to spend extended periods of time, while also allowing increased concentration and productivity for those who need to work from home. So how then buildings contribute towards a low carbon and resilient city? Buildings and the construction activities surrounding it are responsible for nearly 40% of energy-related carbon dioxide emissions worldwide. What can we do to further cut down on our energy consumption in buildings so that carbon emissions are reduced? This is an issue can be addressed at its source. If we lower our energy need, we will require less energy to consume in our day-to-day activity. For example, energy-saving light bulbs create the same amount of illumination as regular bulbs without creating wasted heat, thus consuming less energy. In addition, insulating a building leads to less energy use for heating and cooling, in order to achieve a satisfactory temperature. Energy efficiency has been dubbed as the first fuel of a low-carbon society by the Energy Efficiency Financial Institutions Group, as it is a cost-effective and widely available resource capable of energy saving that can displace electricity generation from primary energy resources. As increase in energy efficiency will reduce the demand for fossil fuel and at the same time offer a financial incentive for both homeowners and companies alike, as a reduced energy consumption can accumulate to large cost savings over time. Fire resilience is one of the crucial parameters of a resilient building and needs to be addressed as one of the biggest safety concerns for new building and existing buildings. The adverse effect of a building fire goes beyond the immediate structure, the victims, and emergency response personnel. It also adds pollutant gases to the air, contaminates water system, and influences health of citizens. Including fire resilience as part of the building codes and policies can help individuals, businesses, and societies recover quickly from this type of incident. High-risk buildings such as high-rise buildings, hospitals, care homes, kindergartens, and prisons are of particular concern for the fire design because people cannot self-evacuate when a fire occurs. For these buildings, it is essential to limit the possibility of fire and smoke spread, and this can be achieved by using non-combustible building materials. Whether you're building an office, healthcare facility, or school, and now in midst of a pandemic, even a home, any project that will provide a workplace for people, remember that noise leads to stress and over long term can decrease productivity and increase turnover rates for organizations. Architects, building owners, and designers will save time and money in the long run by considering sound absorption early in the planning process, especially when creating open space to ensure they ultimately meet the objectives they designed. Once there are too many people in a space, speech privacy and concentration becomes difficult, if not impossible to achieve, and noise levels are hard to control. Therefore, there's a great need for acoustic and noise absorptive surface to reduce the sound level in the room. So, as the majority of us are indoors for about 90% of the time, especially in the current pandemic situation, built environment is not just critical for the preservation of the environment in the terms of its impact on energy consumption and carbon emission, but it is also vital to our health, safety, and comfort. By studying the risk faced by the city and understanding the interdependency of the system and society, city officials and planners can design robust solutions and implement effective programs to improve their development trajectories and enhance the well-being of their populations. Just like the rest of the world, Malaysia is facing a challenging future where the ongoing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic will have to be managed effectively in order for the nation to recover successfully. How we choose to respond now can have a lasting impact on our future. The recent lockdown, where many people were forced to stay at home for several months, highlighted how much we depend on buildings for our health and comfort. So it's important to consider what it is that makes a building more resilient, a safe and healthy environment for us to live in. There are specifically 4 areas we can consider. Number 1, fire resilience is an important consideration as population density increases. With more buildings in less space, fire can more easily spread. Partially due to the amount of synthetic materials in buildings and homes, fires today develop 6 times faster than they did 50 years ago. As cities grow, more high-rise structures are required to accommodate new citizens. When talking about fire safety, this type of structures need additional safety consideration during construction to ensure that in the case of emergency, solutions are in place to help to slow the spread of fire, and allow occupants to escape safely. Materials like stone wool that improve the fire resilience of buildings can help keep inhabitants safe and limit the impact of potentially devastating events. The majority of fire-related deaths and injuries can actually be attributed to the inhalation of smoke. All combustible materials produce toxic smoke when they burn. Using non-combustible materials like stone wool will help minimize the amount of toxic smoke while helping contain the fire to where it started. Number 2, buildings with poor energy thermal performance leave residents more vulnerable during a heat wave, as keeping the temperature at a comfortable level will require more energy. The productivity of people working in temperatures outside the comfort zone dropped by 6% as it becomes increasingly difficult to concentrate in extreme temperatures. Increased humidity also provides ideal conditions for mold to grow and spread, which can lead to asthma and other respiratory problems. Thermal efficiency of your building should therefore be a primary consideration. Creating a building that is more resilient to extreme temperatures and reducing your reliance on cooling from non-renewable energy sources can begin with improving your insulation requirement. Insulation such as stone wool helps to regulate temperatures and keep environment cool and comfortable. Businesses and public institutions should potentially save or could potentially save thousands of dollars each year by improving the thermal performance of their offices and buildings. Improving the thermal performance of buildings will significantly reduce overall energy demand and thereby reduce CO2 emissions. In urban environment, noise pollution leads to serious health issues like hypertension, increased stress, poor concentration, plus sleeping loss and fatigue. Reducing noise pollution in buildings is essential for future resilience and a healthy society. Noise pollution is a major health risk for populations, with the WHO estimating about 1 million lives lost per year indirectly from exposure to environmental noise. However, there are solutions to significantly reduce noise pollution in daily life. Insulation is the key to maintaining a comfortable and noise-free home or workplace. Not only does stone wool insulation help reduce the negative health impact of noise pollution, but slashing noise in workplaces may improve productivity by up to 3%. And finally, choosing durable materials that can withstand high temperature, humidity, and vibration over long periods without losing their performance will keep buildings safe and comfortable for years to come. A material as stone wool insulation provides excellent thermal and acoustic properties for over 55 years without loss of performance. A resilient building stock is vital for adapting to climate change, improving energy efficiency and fire safety in building structures, and increasing the indoor climate remains the defining characteristics of resilience. Adopting innovative technologies and solutions that help shield and prepare future generations against the effect of climate change is how we can create resilient and sustainable environments for city population. Stone wool insulation help increase the safety and resilience of city, one building at a time. Finally, with the majority of the world's population living in urban environments, cities have become the beating hearts of their country's economy. Economic prosperity gives cities additional power, but with it comes greater responsibility. Thank you. With this, I end my presentation, and I hope everyone could visit the link provided for more resources for low carbon and resilient city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. That was comforting to see. A simple product like insulation, when used in multiple locations in a building, can actually help reduce heat gain and increase energy efficiency. With Malaysia's position close to the equator, Majority of the heat gain comes from the roof. So, if anything, focusing on roof insulation when designing new buildings or retrofitting existing buildings will definitely have a significant impact on the overall energy efficiency of the building. On to the next presenter, we have Mr. Daniel Rupert, who is the CEO of Sedania Innovators. Sedania started off as a data-based ICT solutions provider to the telecommunications industry and now has expanded into green technology with various renewable energy and energy efficiency solutions. With a very interesting topic of how to save RM 5 billion in electricity each year, please welcome Mr. Daniel Rupert.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. I have about 15 minutes to explain how to save 5 billion worth of electricity per year. My name is Daniel Rupert. I'm the CEO of Sedania Innovator Berhad, and I would like to go straight into the topic. We're all familiar with this statistic. It shows the electricity consumption in Malaysia. We have industrial sector with over 50% in place number one, and we have the commercial sector with over 25% in the second place, and residential electricity consumption in third place with probably around 35 to 40%. What is more interesting is the following chart though. In total, the consumption in Malaysia is around 153,000 gigawatt hours per year. Now, if I take a look of how much of that is on buildings and on non-buildings, you will see that about over 40% of the kilowatt hours is used on buildings, about 63,000 kilowatt hours per year. Now let's take a closer look again on the buildings. If you take this apart and look at how much of that is commercial and residential buildings, you will see that 25% of that, about 38,600 kilowatt hours, is the energy consumption on commercial buildings. And about 16% or 24,000 kilowatt hours per year is on residential buildings. Now, let's take a look at that 38,000 for the commercial buildings. If that is worth roughly about 20 billion ringgits per year if you apply the typical commercial tariff that we have right now in Malaysia. Now, all we have to do is apply about 25% of energy saving, and there we are saving about 5 billion worth of ringgits worth of electricity per year. If we know that this is the target that we want to zoom into, let's take a look at how this sector is spending the electricity. So if you take the larger chunks of those, especially the large office buildings, I think here also no surprise that the majority of over 50% is spent on air conditioning, with lighting in second place with around 19%, and then lift and pumps with 18%, and others around 6%. So at least now we know what we have to deal with and what technology we have to apply in order to get savings. Now, what tools do we have available in order to save 5 million worth of electricity? We have various technologies and methods available, and overall we call these all energy saving devices or energy saving measures. I like to break them down into three main components. We have energy efficiency, renewable energy, and energy conservation. Now, there are various technologies out there under each sector, and I will highlight a few of them. But before I do so, I want to understand who actually Sedania is. Why are we talking about technologies? We are a technology company. We have about 5 different verticals in which we apply our technologies. In fintech, our technology enabled over 400,000 Islamic finance transactions worth 35 billion. In sharing, we have enabled over 1 billion telco P2P transaction. In green tech, we are now actively saving up to 100 million in 400 buildings. In IoT, we have connected 7,000 commercial buildings to the Bombas SPKA system. And with our recent investment in esports, we have built a platform with a presence now in over 11 countries worldwide. We are listed in Bursa Malaysia since 2015. We are a Bumi company, and we also are a conscious business enterprise and people, which means that we are seeking to benefit both human beings and the environment. And yes, as technology nerds, we are very proud of our awards. We have collected various awards for innovation over the last few years from various places around the world, from Malaysia, Frankfurt, Spain, and Canada. But let's get back to the topic at hand. In order to save 5 billion worth of electricity, we need to have the fundamentals for the so-called big ticket savings in place. They are, number one, it has to be bankable. So what Sedania does is we use the holistic approach, meaning that we are looking at various energy saving solutions and package them from various different vendors into one energy performance contract, which is bankable. Secondly, we need to be performance dependent. In order for energy saving initiatives to be rolled out systematically across the nation, it has to be clear that the responsibility to achieve the energy saving has to be with the energy saving provider, like in our case, Sedania. We get paid from the achieved energy cost savings, so there is no risk for the client. And thirdly, tomorrow's technology has to be included. It would be a mistake to look at only the technologies that we have at hand now. As we know, technology is evolving, and it will be very likely that tomorrow or next year a new technology emerges that achieves even better energy savings potential for whatever sector we're looking at. So when we're doing an energy performance contract, we have to remain open that over the next 6 to 10 years, we will be able to purchase, install new energy saving measures that can add additional saving. So this is not a one-off exercise, but a continuous effort. Now I keep on talking about energy performance contract, so I'd like to spend a few minutes just explaining of how it actually works. Let's say the energy performance contractor, or in short the EPC contractor, is approaching you and proposing that it can save for your building or for your group of buildings about 25% of energy saving. Yeah, that is the red area. That means your electricity bills can be reduced from 100 down to 75%. Now, when the contract actually starts, then a portion, about 70 to 80% of that 25% energy saving will have to be paid to the energy or to the EPC contractor, which then will leave you a remaining net reduction of around 10%. Now, the portion that the EPC contractor receives, which is, like I said, about 70 to 80% of the achieved energy saving, will be used to pay back for the technology, the hardware, the software, the installation cost, the project management, and the financing cost. And of course, there is a remainder, which is also a profit for the EPC contractor to keep him motivated and keep on doing what we are doing. Now, an EPC contract typically lasts for about 6 years. That means for the first 6 years, that portion will go to the EPC contractor and towards the bank, leaving you still with a net OPEX reduction of around 10%. After the EPC is over, all the equipment will belong to you and all the energy saving are going to you 100%. That means you will then increase from 10 to 25% energy saving directly into your P&L. That gives you in total a allocation of around 16% OPEX reduction over the 10 years. Now you may ask if a 25% energy saving rate is realistic. Let me give you an answer by showing you a case study of a live project that we are currently doing with a telecommunication company in Malaysia. We are doing 11 sites. These are all data exchanges in Malaysia, and we have targeted a saving rate of 23%. We're using also the holistic approach, meaning that we are looking at various vendors, various technologies, all of which can be complementary, adding energy saving in order to achieve a group saving of 23%. The financial model is also an energy performance contract, and we have completed 4 sites which have now reached, in July, have reached a 22% energy saving rate, and that is still without the voltage optimizers, which will probably give us another 5 to 8%. So we will be beyond our target of 23% and reaching 25%. Now let me give you a few examples of technologies that we have in our portfolio from various vendors around the world and which are being deployed as we speak. Let's start with energy monitoring. Energy monitoring is not really a device that saves energy, but it is required in order for us to monitor and continuously analyze and optimize the various technologies that we have installed. Are they performing? Do they need to be further enhanced? Do they need to be expanded? Secondly, we will install IoT sensors. This particular IoT sensor, which we call ASAP, is our own device. We have developed that in-house. Is a combination of various sensors. For our current jobs, we use it mainly for temperature monitoring. So if you have an operation with multiple branches or multiple sites, which you will require to have a consistent temperature, and you want to avoid having various sites maybe being overcooled, then this energy monitoring device is a necessity. Thirdly, we have voltage optimizers. These are installed at the incoming main power supply and are giving a saving on all of the connected load. Depending on the quality of your incoming power, this may range from 6 to 12% on the entire connected load. Lighting, I think that is nothing new. Obviously, LED lighting is offering a substantial amount of saving. If you are still on T8 or T5 conventional tube lighting, then you can enjoy probably up to 60 to 80% of saving. Now, we learned earlier that air conditioning is actually the majority of energy consumed within commercial buildings. So we have various technologies that we consider on a regular basis, depending on the condition of your air conditioning. So if your aircon is relatively old and cannot be rated as energy efficient anymore, then the easiest is to replace them. Replacing an aircon, a high efficiency aircon, with an older aircon can give you a saving of 10 to 20% on the actual AC load. You can also consider installing circulation fans, which will help on the disbursement of the cool air and therefore enable you or allow you to set a lower temperature by having the same ambience experience in the rooms. That can lead to 3 to 5% of saving. Also, we have a secondary AC condenser technology from Japan in our portfolio that is, as the name says, basically a second condenser sitting on right next to and on top of the outside a condenser. That improves the heat exchanging performance and gives you a saving of 20 to 35% on the AC load. And last but not least, we also have a smart controller which basically overrides the existing controller which comes built into in the aircons and avoids the coil overcooling. This will give you a saving of about 20 to 30% as well. Here I would like to give you an example of what you can achieve by just having a high efficiency air conditioning installed. This is also from one of our live projects on one site where we have finished the installation of the air conditioning. So we replaced about 95% of the existing aircons with new high efficiency aircons. And as you can see, from October to December, there's clearly a difference on a daily basis in the AC load. Another interesting technology is the so-called aero green cooling fans. These are aerodynamic airfoil blades with a low drag and a high lift. They're made from fiberglass reinforced plastic, and they give you an over 80% higher efficiency, which results into about 20% of energy saving in the fan motor load. For example, one of our live projects, which has been done, just completed recently, gave us a saving of over 45% on the fan load. In this particular case, there were 8 fans involved, so that's why you have 8 different bars in red and green, and you can see the performance or the load factors before and after. So in total, for that client, that gave a saving of over 365,000 per year by just changing the fans. And that brings us to the end of my presentation. I thank you for your time and attention. If you are interested and you would like to hear more about Sedania and how we can achieve energy saving for you, obviously you can go to our website www.sedaniainnovator.com, or you can also contact me. My name is Daniel Rupert. I'm looking forward to hear from you, and thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. That was electrifyingly efficient. Energy performance contracting, or better known as EPC, when done correctly, is a good mechanism to carry out energy efficiency initiatives in a building. I believe that we are still in our infancy stage with EPC in Malaysia, and as more organizations become aware of this and understand the complexities as well as the opportunities EPC can provide, and with more companies providing innovative solutions, I believe EPC can drive building energy efficiency in Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, the next group of presenters are no stranger to the low carbon cities scene in Malaysia. They represent various professional bodies, associations and organizations that are working hard to drive sustainability and help transform our cities into low carbon cities. They have been with us throughout the Low Carbon Cities webinar series, sharing their knowledge and insights on various topics to everyone. I would like to thank them for their contribution and continued support. Thank you. First, let me introduce Town Planner Haji Ehsan Zainal Mokhtar, who is the current president of the Malaysian Planning Organisation, MIP. He has 26 years of experience in urban and rural planning and will be sharing with us on the evolution of urban planning and the new normal. Please welcome Town Planner Haji Ehsan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So, the evolution of planning policies, what makes cities grow. So, before I get to what makes a city grow, in the first place, why do we have cities that exist? So, humans basically need each other. I think that is the basis of people getting together in the early stages of development. Now, and there's a need for people to interact with each other. What has happened, cities have grown. So what I'm showing a bit here is we look at the various cities, Singapore, South Korea, Dubai, just some visions of what has happened to the cities around the world. So this phenomenon of cities growing, and I think this has happened exponentially over the last 20 to 30 years. So what is worrying is as far as planning practice is concerned, is that our resources are running out. We are going to lose our resources if we are not careful about it. So this change of the way cities have grown has made planning more necessary in Malaysia and around the world. So we see that as the population increases, as demographic changes, resources need to be shared, and we have to be more careful with what we have. So the speed of change has increased tremendously, has changed and has made over the last 10 to 20 years our lifestyle change. We do need to take into consonance that the fact that we do need to make our planning practice better. We do need to take the environmental factor into consideration. And in Malaysia, what has happened in the last 10 years is that has seen Kuala Lumpur, Penang, Johor Bahru growing to the extent that we have to be careful. We have to take cognizance that things cannot be as it is. So 100 years of planning in Malaysia has resulted in better cities, has resulted in better planning, but we cannot take that for granted. We do need to actually take into cognizance that there are many things that are naturally in Malaysia. For example, that recently we had the loss of water supply in Klang Valley. We had the polluted river. So these things are happening even in the times of where our planning is already at a very advanced stage. So we cannot take things for granted. So let's put our thinking caps together. Let's look forward to another 100 years, but let's not forget the resources that we have. So I think before I talk about public participation, I think it's only fair that I catch up a little bit about the Malaysian planning system, just in case some of our audience miss. And it's quite interesting actually to hear that in Singapore, with the master planning going ahead, as compared to what is happening in Indonesia, which is going right across from one end of the archipelago to the other. It's as big as the United States. So we have two contrasting neighbors, one with a very extensive land and sea mass, and we have Singapore, which is a city-state. So the point is, even both advances in planning have shown that Malaysia's right there, center cute. We're somewhere in between Singapore and Indonesia. And we still have a very similar system, or a three-tier system. So we have the federal, state, and local planning. We have 154 local authorities. So I think in some ways we face the same problems of advocating sustainability. Plan Malaysia has been in the forefront of ensuring that we are united through major planning documents that has been prepared at the national level. We definitely need to get the community involved. I think as Pak Bernie was saying, bottom line is planning is for the people. It's no point if we have city that's nice to view. We want it to be nice to view and also nice to live in. It has to be, at the end of the day, back to the benefit of the community. So in what we have done in Malaysia, if I may pick up, the topic was the mechanisms or approach and level of involvement in decision making that can benefit the community. So in our system, in Malaysia's planning system, we have the National Physical Plan, which is encompassing the whole nation, the whole country. And what we do is, what has been done actually is all stakeholders. When we say stakeholders, it involves the federal government, the state government, the local authorities, planners, architects, and other professions are involved in putting the plans together. The economists, the anthropologists, this will set the tone of the physical planning for the nation. Now, this is translated to through various focus group, town hall sessions, through the media, and I think social media is one of the very active platform. I mean, the fact that we are talking to each other across oceans and seas shows that public participation can reach you wherever you are. You know, if the technology and the speed is right. But before we get too excited about that in Malaysia, there are groups that I think somehow, although we have made the effort to get them involved, they are still being not totally being part of the system. We look at our homeless, we look at our flora and fauna and our environment. These are stakeholders too, and somehow they are not able, or their views, or those who are taking care of them, their views are not so much put across, not so much heard, because development or planning is still very much development oriented. We are still looking at we're still looking at tall skyscrapers. We're still looking at high density development. We're still looking at very much physical development. I'm not against it, and I think we should never be against it because it's part of the economic system. But however, we do need to realize that the environment is just as important. Those custodian of the environment, the indigenous people, the flora and the fauna. So these are very much part of our community, if I may say. They are very much part of what makes our environment better, part of what makes planning more necessary. So with that in mind, we should not forget that we have a big responsibility, and the haze that in Indonesia will affect us in Malaysia, and our whatever happens in Borneo will affect our brothers in Indonesia, Thailand, and Singapore. So we are one world. We are one world. Especially in terms of planning, the idea of just concentrating on the development in each of our country has to be dispelled, because what happens in Indonesia affects Malaysia and vice versa. So coming back to the early part, we're talking about COVID-19, so maybe we'll talk more about that, but it is definitely a game changer. COVID-19, I think is one. What it has done to planners across the world, governments across the world, is to rethink and to relook at how we live our life. If I'm not mistaken, we during those 3 months of staying home, we realized that the environment in Malaysia got much better. So, we have to look at this uncertainty, this pandemic and disaster. We have to be more resilient. Planning definitely needs to be more resilient. Planning needs to be stronger. Planning needs to be more inclusive. When we talk about being inclusive, it's all strata of society. It's all communities. It's those that do not have voices. It's our resources. We can't be growing at a rate where we grow, but the expense of our soul, if you like, at the expense of our environment, at the expense of our culture. So for the way forward, I think we have to realize that technology has changed. There are better ways of doing things. So Malaysia has in its 100 years, I think, of planning, despite the problems that we have done pretty well. But we have to learn, we have to adapt, we have to realize that we have to realize that there are things that we need to do. For example, now we see what's happening in our city, the movement of products across the city, across the country. There's the delivery. So we need to ensure that planning is adapting to these new changes. We've got to build smarter infrastructure. The city has got to be smarter, without forgetting that we have, for example, we say 70% of our population in Malaysia is now urban, and 30% is rural. But we got to also remember that the 30% that is rural, the 30% that is rural, that's right, is staying in 70% of the land mass. So, is that 70% that we have also to take care of. And in Malaysia, we're losing our forests, and I think it's also in Indonesia and throughout the world. So we have to take care of our resources. And I think that's where urban planning, despite being pro-development and pro-growth, has to look back at what development is, what growth is, to ensure that it is sustainable. In the true sense of the word, it's no point if we talk about being sustainable, we talk about the next generation, but we can see the destruction right in front of our eyes, the pollution of rivers, and sometimes we don't even understand. That's what happened in Pasir Gudang. Why? We still have not resolved that. We can lose water supply in the Klang Valley. affecting us for almost a week. We still have people polluting the river. So all is not sunshine in Malaysia, but we have done well, and we have to learn the lessons of the last 100 years. It's only we can only really move forward if we learn from our mistakes. And I think I love to look at Singapore. Singapore is a lesson of, look, you got limited resources, you got nowhere to go, so you better live within that limited resources and live well. And on the other hand, we look across our Indonesian counterpart, whose actually population, if I'm not mistaken, the fourth largest in the world, right? And a landmass, when you talk between two cities, between LA and New York, my God, putting it that way was very nice, Pak Beni, meaning that it's so big. And here we are in Malaysia, I think, in a more manageable size, if you like, in less variations, if you like. So we can learn good things from our two neighbors, and we have to work together. Now, that part of the working together involves even locally and across boundaries. So this thinking, again, like I said, we always say, we have to relate this to cost. We have to have everything that we want to do is related to the economy. We have to look at what Bhutan does. It looks at happiness index. So these are the soft side of things that I think in us trying to achieve sustainable planning, I hope it's not just a catchphrase, but rather really sustainable development. Because in our country, like I said, despite doing well, we're still doing silly things. We're still allowing for mass destruction of our forests. We're still allowing for the destruction of our environment. So, we have a lot of challenges. So not only must the planners be thinking about doing things in a sustainable manner, but we must also get the masses, we must also get the people, we must also get everyone to understand that the planning not only affects the physical environment, but it affects our social life, it affects our survival. In fact, we should be looking at planners is actually trying to save the survivability of our species, actually. If you don't do it right, I mean, I'm not trying to play doomsday here, but if we do not take care of our environment, we don't need a nuclear war to destroy the world. We might not have enough water. We are not appreciating of the air that we breathe. We will lose all these things. So we need to refocus. The message that I was trying to put across, it's for us, it's for the big people, it's for the community, it's for the rakyat. Whatever we do, the planning that we do, it's not to look at a nice environment and it becomes monumental, but to live in a nice environment, to have clean water, guaranteed, not to destroy our source of clean water, our rivers, not to destroy the source of our clean air, our forests and our trees, and it's the whole ecological system. That is what planning is about. This is to me the biggest challenge, actually, to include our, not to the point that we become patronizing, but look, we all have to be, in a way, the custodian of the environment. So technology has allowed that, and we should not look at technology as the problem, but as the solution of let's slow down, take a step back, and become a better world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Town Planner Haji Ehsan. It is interesting to see how things have changed so much in a short period of time, and it is equally exciting to see how we evolve from here as we deal with the new normal and our new reality. Next, we have IR Santakumaran from the Institute of Engineers Malaysia. He has 26 years of experience in the management of building and infrastructure services for various sectors such as hotels, hospitals, railways, ports, transportation, and university complexes, both locally and internationally. Please welcome IR Santakumaran with his presentation titled Engineers' Role in a Smaller Scale.
Selamat sejahtera and welcome to everyone who's gathered today in front of this multimedia in the series of talk by the title Norma Baru Bandar Rendah Carbon, which stands for Low Carbon Cities. We have been having this series of talk by MGTC, Malaysian Green Technology Corporation, who works under Ministry of Environmental and Water of Malaysia, and I've been invited again. I'm really thankful, my gratitude to MGTC for giving me another chance today with the topic of the role of engineers in a smaller scale. My name is Santa Kumaran. I am an engineer by profession and representing IGEM today. So IGEM always work together with MGTC as well as the Ministry of Environmental and Water. It's an honor to meet everybody through this talk. Yeah. Okay, we straight to the talk. Yeah. The title is the role of engineers in a smaller scale. So don't misquote. Yeah, smaller scale doesn't mean it's very small and very least. No, it is called smaller scale because we are not going to talk about big system like a wind turbine, geotech, or solar power. These kind of things need more as a team, as a big team, you know. But we're going to talk about engineers' role in a smaller scale. Okay. Well, as a beginning, okay, engineers have to be versatile, meaning it's beyond their own trade. They can be mechanical engineers, they can be electrical engineers, or any engineering, okay, but they has to be versatile. They need to know in a building industry, in building services, more than their own trade. Building is by architect, right? So we need to know all the niche, all the building materials, all the design, how it's been done. It's all about low city or low carbon city made of buildings, right? Number two, all right, engineers, they have to inspire. Yeah, they are versatile. They also need to focus in certain things, niche. That means they have some weightage, some knowledge specifically on certain things, and narrow down their scope. And then we will talk about innovative today. Engineers have to be innovative. Selling the ideas beyond profit. Profit is important, but it's a win-win situation. Create name for themselves, and the objective, the result oriented. It's a must. At the end of the day, it's the result that matters, right? So the focus is the goal. All right. In building services, I'm going to narrow down only to two, which are air conditioning and lightings. This is enough for today. we have to identify the most effective design, all right, in our own control. Okay, air conditioning, it's not just the unit that you see. There's a very big story behind it. You need to study the envelope, meaning the building, how it's been designed, and the surroundings. Building materials, this is what I said earlier. Engineers have to be really versatile. They need to know the materials, all right, because the material is the one gaining the heat from the sun. So the less heat they absorb and bring inside, the smaller air conditioning you're going to install. Simple as that. But there's a huge technologies inside. Understanding our climate. Daytime is hot, nighttime is cold. How many of us know that we can save a lot of energy if we understand the climate and we design accordingly? I mean, air conditioning. Choose the right air conditioner. Finally, you have to choose the right unit. There are centralized, there are unitary. We will touch on that also later. All right. In a building envelope, usually it takes about 1/3 of the air conditioning design. You know, in a building, normal office buildings, if you're talking about the electricity consumption, it's most of the time comes from lighting and air conditioning. And air conditioning is not just by air conditioning, but it's all regarding the building, the roof, the windows, the shadows, the curtains, you know, and how much the infiltration of the hot air which just comes in. And the other equipments, yes, one third of the building energy goes for equipments that's inside the building as well. We need, but we're not going to talk about the equipments today. It's regarding envelope, lighting, air conditioning, occupancy, maybe. No? Later, if they can edit this video, they will show the pie chart. I've made a lot of PowerPoint presentation on these matters. There are PowerPoint slides. I hope the organizers will try to merge in this video. All right. Building envelope. We're talking about the roof. Okay. Below the roof, we should have insulations, right? Architect knew this, but what missing link is the communication between the architects and the engineers. Engineers receive the design and start designing the air conditioning. That shouldn't be the way. Engineer must involve from the beginning and talk to the architect, because architects' work is pressure. Okay, they are precious and pressured because they are working with clients. Client wants the beauty and the shape, you know. So sometimes there are some missing links. So consult each other how the building material is going to. So engineers, when they design air conditioning, they have a software nowadays. Those days, my time, no. In the software, they're going to put every element. The wall is made of what? The roof is made of what? The windows are made of what? Is the window going to have curtains? Is the window going to hang over or awnings? You know, and where the sun is coming? Okay, is it facing the north, south, southeast? With the trees around? A lot of passive things involved. Engineers, please be alert. You have to do the heat load calculation for them. Spend some money, go and take some extra courses, because not being taught in universities, this kind of things. Now I have to go a little bit faster because of the time constraint. Yeah, so I'm not going to touch on the design per se. That's a long story. We'll have another talk on that. Okay, but meanwhile, do not just calculate based on the area and fix the air conditioning. No, we have RH, relative humidity, that we'll be dealing with. There are gradients, okay, grains of the particles of the air, and the heat load calculations. All the data is important. That's why the product knowledge is very important. Go for the exhibitions. I think Green Tech and Ministry, they're arranging some exhibitions, you know, where all the material guys will come and participate. Take the data sheet. What is the U value? What is the K value? Calculate each items. Calculate. If you got software, good. If you don't have software, use the manual. All the same. It's just a time, okay, the matter of time. Understanding the climate. Daytime, try not to bring in hot air inside. Don't open the windows. Fresh air is important, but we must know how to control it. Nighttime, make sure you introduce the air from outside to come in. I designed my house like that. We put a small ventilation fan. We introduce the cold air. Nighttime is about 25, 26 degrees Celsius, 27 is good, you know. So there are ways. Talk to the engineers. Engineers, be more innovative. Study our climate, how to harness the nighttime, the air to come inside. And then put timer for air conditioning. It doesn't have to run for 8 hours at night. Timer or automations. You have choices. Nah? Then you can limit at night. Okay, maybe you run the aircon for 1 hour enough, it can cool down, and then you manage your room with the windows, with the introduction of cold air. You save a lot. Okay, this is what I say, in a smaller scale, engineers' role in a smaller scale. Be more innovative. Study. Open up your mind, the books. Open your mind, open your books. Go attend seminars, go attend short courses by IGEM. We conduct a lot of courses in between. It's not expensive, you know. And you have to learn more things. There are a lot of things happening now. Okay, now we go into which air conditioning system we're going to choose. This is what I said earlier. It is not just what we like or based on cost. It's highly technical. Why we have so many choices of air conditioning? We got unitary, we got cassette unit, we got wall unit, we got ceiling conceal, you got AHUs, FCUs. In a bigger scale, we got chillers, cooling towers. Which is the best? Which suits your building? Meaning, we have a very deep technical things over here. The engineers need to really sit down and study or learn or share knowledge with the aircon suppliers. Not just fall for any tricks. Alright? Don't go for because of this constraint or that constraint, That's why I said we must involve in the design from the early stage. Talk to the architect, I need this much of space for this. I need to put my outdoor unit in this manner, And then we'll talk about the harnessing the sunlight later and related to the lighting. So it's not a simple formula when it comes to air conditioning. We have to calculate the coefficient of performance and efficiencies, air distributions, many things. But nowadays engineers, due to time constraint, they use a lot of rule of thumbs, which is, it works for certain extent, but it's not going to save energy for you. All right. Proof before selecting. That means you must justify why did you choose that. You have a fact sheets. All the items must be recorded. At the end of the day, I choose this system based on this, and this is the energy usage it's going to have. So from the beginning, we know how much the energy the building going to use. The ratings are number 2 for me. I'm not into getting the awards, or that is bonus point if you can do it. Do it with enthusiasm first. Your integrity as an engineer. All right. We go into lighting now. Nowadays people talk about LED, yes, but people don't know the niche of the LED lightings, the distributions, the lux level, and why do you need certain types of light in certain types of places. There are, believe me, there are hundreds of different types of LED lights. There are round, there are square, there are spot, there are really spot, reading. I learned in between lately what is this all about, and then product knowledge. You must really sit and talk, not just to the salesman, because some salesmen are good, they're very technical. Some salesmen, they're pressured, they just wanted to promote whatever item they have, But engineer's duty, study the profile of the lighting, talk, look at the simulations. How's the distribution? Do we really need the sunlight? See, behind me curtain, I didn't draw, it was very hot outside, so I do not need the sunlight, that much of sunlight. With this smaller light, I can read, it's quite bright. So it's not just based on feelings, but based on proven data sheets. At home also same. You need to have windows, double glazing or triple glazing with the awnings. How much sun that you need. If you do not need, close the curtain during the daytime, especially 11 o'clock, 12, 1, 2, 3 p.m, 4 p.m. You do not need that much of heat inside. Unnecessarily, we are creating problem. It's like filling a jar of water with a hole inside. Keep leaking out and keep filling. Same, you keep bringing the heat and then you run the air conditioning. What's the point? Right. So, engineers, you have to have the design brief from the beginning until the end. All right. This is the reason I introduced this aircon. It could have been bigger, but we managed to reduce it at least about 40% out of it. Believe me, 40%. If the building envelope, you talk to the architect from the beginning, you need what do you call that, aluminum sheets below, insulations, so that reflect the sunlight back to the sky, the roof, the heat gains, and have few options. Select the best together with the client. You must do the presentation. How many mechanical engineers or engineers consultant really go into the proper presentation before your product comes to realization? Your product is your design. Now, evaluate and justify. I have some slides of the types of LED light. I hope the admin will attach together. They know how to merge and edit this video. Okay, it's going to be 15 minutes sharp. Bye bye. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, you can post to MGTC.
Thank you, Arasanta. As usual, very simple, straightforward and practical sharing by Arasanta that is easy for everyone to understand and follow. Next, I would like to introduce Architect Mustafa Kamal from the Pertubuhan Architect Malaysia. AR Mustafa Kamal is the founder of Architect Mustafa Kamal, who has 35 years of experience in architecture. Self-described as a futurist, Architect Mustafa Kamal will be speaking on the shift towards resilient cities, economy, urban, community and technology. Please welcome Architect Mustafa Kamal.
Salam and hello everybody. I'm Architect Mustafa Kamal, representing Pertubuhan Architect Malaysia or Malaysian Institute of Architects. This year, IGEM 2020 goes virtual. So thank you very much MGTC for allowing me to spend some time and to present a paper about sustainability, but this time is on low carbon cities under new normal. My topic will be about the shift towards resilient cities, economy, urban, community, and tech. So I will talk about how this new normal will create a better resilient cities for the future. The problems of new towns or even cities at the moment are multitude. It includes rich and poor gap. It includes open space fight, transnational organized crime, health issues especially now, clean water and food, democratization, the chase for power, transportation sustainability, global foresight and decision making, whether it's to be or not to be, energy and environment, the gender equity, sustainable development and climate change, peace and conflict, where people are asking for better wages or better things to come in the city, population and resources, land, food, and others, science and technology, where they should be there, we should be digitizing, or we should be doing something else, as well as global ethics. In urban, we always talk about principles, and there are about 10 principles that we have to actually achieve in order for us to get a better urban quality of life. One is the need for connectivity, walkability, the mix and the diversity of development, the housing types. Then you have a quality architecture and urban heritage, because that's also a very important, plays an important role, not just urban design. Then you have a neighborhood centers, how you create this neighborhood, especially now in pandemics, people don't have to go far to get their food. Then you look about the density. It's about density or it's about crowdiness. Then you talk about the smart transportation. Then you talk about sustainability of all this before you can achieve the quality of life. In urban, when we are talking about sustainability, not just centralized or decentralized, it should be a mix of both. That's where the proximity of certain things, and you need to be far from some other things. But you need a good sense of provision of infrastructure such as transit, a walkable environment, a diversity of economic activity, and the ability for it to be able to ensure that the human can be live better within that area. So in an urban design protocol, you need to balance a tripartite provision to be productive, to be environment responsible, and also to be cultivating a better health and a cohesive, inclusive communities. Because without people, you can have a city. You need people. You need good environments, and you need to have good economic activity. That's where productivity comes in. So in the middle, where it all transcends together, that's where the quality urban design comes together. And one of the ways to approach a quality urban design, you must have a livable city. That livable city will have these 5 components to make it better for their place. One is stability, a stability of infrastructure, the stability of a population. Then you need a good healthcare, especially now in these unprecedented times, you need a good healthcare. Then you need good education, schools, universities or colleges. Then you need good infrastructure. Infrastructure such what? Road networks, public transportation, energy and power, as well as water for the livability of the city. And we cannot forget about the culture and environment aspect. That's where the human soul, the mental stability of the human will be better. That's why I'm proposing the idea of these resilient cities, because they are much needed in order to ensure that people don't be wary or afraid, because the cities can come back up and resuscitate immediately after a problem or after a disaster. So in order for it to have a resilient cities, it needs to be smart, it needs to be green, it needs to be accessible, and it needs to be sustainable. Not forgetting, it needs to have very cultured and also artified persons. So this is where cities can be much more stronger when you have these 5 components. That's the reason why cities needs to have this capacity towards breaking the limitations in order to prioritize and also to protect certain assets and provide them in order to have a good strategy for having a good cities. So I'm proposing these 4 P's and 4 V's later, and in our action we're looking for a planned growth to monitor results and to have a better sustainability. So what is resilient cities? Resilient cities are very a special breed of cities. A resilient city is one that has developed capacities to have absorbed future shocks and stresses to its social, economic, and technical systems and infrastructure, so as still to be able to maintain essentially the same functions, structures, system, and identity within a short time far better. So in short, it's like ability to recoil, ability to spring back into shape after bending and stretching after being compressed or being stressed. So in the future of resilience, you need this very important scope to be covered. You need to understand the population growth. You need to understand urbanization. You need to understand also the unpredictable national patterns, not just national, international too. And you need to manage it with control resources. So we need to be better, far better, and every time we rebound should be much more stronger and better. So in order for us to make resilient cities, there are probably very simple 8 steps you need to follow. You need to know your result. You need to attract the population to like it. You need to improve the community to understand it. You need to utilize innovation. You need to utilize creative technology. You need to capitalize green and sustainable initiatives. And you need to have more agencies, that means you say collaborations or cross boundaries for both the administrators and also the physical aspect in order to achieve your good actions. And you need to have fast completion. People cannot wait long. So that's why I'm actually looking at these 4 P's and also the 4 V's to create the 4 V's. You need to learn to prioritize. Cities need to learn to plan, to protect whether an area or protect a group. Then you need to provide so that the cities will become much vibrant, vital, more of value, and also variety, so that it can cope for the future and it can be sustainable at its location, and it will be much far better for humans to get a better quality of life. Then with this, the urban design of the city will become much better and better. So under this resilient framework, you need to have this agility, you need to have this, how shall I say, the resourcefulness, the robustness, the reflectiveness, the redundancy of things for a better city living. And it needs to be flexible. It needs to be inclusive too, so that it can be integrated and it becomes a really resilient city. So remember again, these 4 P's: prioritize, plan, protect, provide, in order to provide a good, vibrant, vital, value, variety city that is resilient. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Architect Mustafa Kamal. It is important to take a holistic view when addressing the challenges and issues in our cities. We do not want a situation where we try to solve one problem but end up creating another. Ultimately, it is about how well we integrate technology, urban design, community well-being, and the economy as we try to create a livable city for all. Next, I would like to introduce Encik Zaini Abdul Wahab from the Malaysian Association of Energy Service Companies, MESCO. With over 20 years of experience in energy management, Encik Zaini has been a strong and sturdy voice on promoting energy efficiency. Please welcome Encik Zaini, who will be talking to us about how sustainable energy management practices can help achieve business and sustainability goals.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and salam sejahtera. My name is Zaini. Today I'm presenting the Malaysia Association of Energy Services Companies, or MISCO. Thank you to the IGEM 2020 organizer for inviting MISCO to talk about one topic today. Today I would like to talk about sustainable energy management practices to achieve business and sustainability goals. I'll talk about this topic in by focusing on three major elements. Basically, first, how companies practice sustainability in their organizations, and secondly, the strategy on how to implement sustainable energy management practices in their companies, and then lastly, how to move forward. If you talk about sustainability, we cannot avoid from referring to these documents. We call it SDG. This was launched in 2015, consists of 17 goals. We call it Sustainable Development Goals. For this particular topic, the focus will be on this goals number 12, which is about responsible consumption and production. In this goal number 12, basically what is expected. So by 2030, we're supposed to achieve sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources. And on top of that, the second one, basically, what's stated in this particular goals number 12 basically is companies are encouraged, especially large companies or large users, to adopt sustainable practices into their business, and they also need to comply to certain reporting requirements. So globally, companies, sustainability has become something. Energy and sustainability is something become more important nowadays. It's become more and more important because to maintain the growth economically, socially, in terms of business standings, and also they must show that they are contributing to the sustainability of the environment as well. That's why sustainability has become one of the key measures in looking into companies' performance nowadays, not just purely business profitability in terms of monetary benefits. That's why for companies, if you look at how they approach sustainability, they always involve basically three stages. The first stage, normally they will do the minimum. Minimum is that they start to comply to the requirement of the law or requirement of the market. That's why they have to comply. At this stage, normally they just do the minimum, but they don't look this energy sustainability as part of the sustainability strategic matters in their company. And then when they started to have seen or enjoyed benefit from this compliance, minimum compliance, they started to look into how to become more efficient in terms of sustainability. Normally they go to the next stage. At this stage, normally the second stage, they started to look at more strategic about sustainability. At this point, they often look at how they can find way these sustainability activities can contribute directly to their business profitability. And by doing that, they started to look into somebody dedicated to look into the sustainability issue in their company. And at this stage, often they started to appoint an officer, or they call it sustainable officer, to look into sustainability issue in the company. And then the last stage, the mature stage, innovation. This is where they started to integrate the sustainability practice into their business activities, as a part of the core business activities, and not just as a support service. That's why this one also often driven by market, for long-term business performance and also for long-term profitability. And at the same time, they also help, the company also help the global community to address the issue of society, climate change, and all that. But bear in mind, in setting up the sustainability goals in any company, there are few elements, often, common to be looked into. They call it rules, the rules of setting up the goals. And I would like to highlight two elements here. The first element to be highlighted here, basically, the first part is the top management must be committed. Senior management must be committed. They must show they wanted to do it. They want to do it. If not, it's difficult to the operation to take up. And then the second part, the second part in these rules of sustainability, when they're setting up the goals, they must ensure that the sustainability practices will become their business activity, not just support activity. Okay, that's two elements. And what actually? So at Mexico, we look at sustainability from the energy point of view. From energy point of view, means that how we manage our energy in sustainable manner. That's why in sustainable energy management, basically what's that? What's sustainable energy management? Sustainable energy management basically is a process of monitoring, controlling, and conserving your energy in the operations, day-to-day operation. How they do it? It's not that difficult. They have to monitor, do some data collection, and then from there they monitor the performance, and then at the same time they start to look into their into ways on how they can improve their performance or energy cost savings measures, and then they find a way how they can take actions, how they can deploy the resources, the budget, the people, on how to achieve their targets, for them to improve their performance. That's why for MISCO, we look at sustainable energy management in a holistic way. If you look here, this is a very simple diagram here. Everything must come from the top. So there must be a policy decision, from the top of the company organizations. And then once they got a commitment from the policy decisions, they have to find a way how to implement. They come with the implementation strategies here. This is very, very interesting. What often being seen in the practice, basically, this the focus often more on the energy efficient technologies, how they can save energy through some technologies, which is not wrong, because by doing this, it's either using the low cost measure or high cost measure, which require investment. Sometimes you can get the saving, you can get the improvement directly. But if you don't have another part of this, you don't have the management element of that, you may not be able to sustain that performance. That's why for MISCO, in energy management or sustainable energy management, we look into the holistic way, which is must cover the adoption of efficient technologies, and also at the same time, concurrently, you must look into the management part of the energy as well. So for the management part, we need to look into how you do it, in following certain standard or protocol. That's why we always refer to, for us, we often refer to the global standard, which is ISO 50001 about energy management system. That's why by having this technology approach and this management approach, the results that basically you achieve your saving that you intend to achieve. Same time, you can sustain the energy performance for cost reductions. So there has to be two elements concurrently. Otherwise, if you, for example, if you install efficient chiller, the chiller cannot sustain the performance by itself. It must be maintained, to achieve the performance. So that the chiller can achieve the efficient performance throughout its lifetime. That's what I mean by having this management into the holistic approach for sustainable energy management. That's why globally we can see, ISO 2001 has been quickly adopted by companies. For example, in the study here, from 2011 to 2015, from 500 companies became almost 12,000 companies adopting ISO 2001. Means that adopting doing energy management through a proper system, reference standard, proven workable. That's why in the study in Europe here, all right, average savings, for companies that for 42 companies, being studied, average saving per year is about 26%. It's a lot of money there. That's why in the US, for example, based on study here, 75 companies being studied, average saving per year in terms of monetary benefits is about $1.2 million per year. So it shows that adoption of a systematic approach is very, very workable for companies to reduce energy costs. That's why this is basically the common framework of ISO for management system. That's why for energy, it's nothing new. If you look here, there is here commitment. The top management must be committed, okay, and then they must have a policy, and then from there, this is the different compared to other standards. For energy, you have to do a proper energy planning. So energy planning, proper energy planning means that they have to set targets here, alright, and then they have to set the performance indicator. They must set the proper baseline, and they must come with an action plan to achieve these so-called targets. And then they operate the system, and this is then come to the performance evaluations. And this performance evaluation, what they do, they look into the system whether people follow this SOP or not. Same time, they also look into the energy performance. Have they improved in terms of energy performance or not? Means that have they saved energy according to the target or not? And then from there, this input will be given to the top management to review, and then for them to keep giving the support. And this after that continue. This continue. Alright. This is a common approach for any ISO standards. Management system in ISO. That's why for us, we don't reinvent the wheel. That's why for sustainable energy management, you need to follow certain recognized standard. In this particular case, we often refer to ISO 2001. But for ASEAN, for example, we have the ASEAN Energy Management System. Alright, they have that's why. But if you look at any other guideline or standard, they often come to the same framework, same structure. They will have the top management commitment, they will have the policy requirement, and they have the planning for the energy, and then they have to operate the system, and they have to monitor performance, and then finally they must bring back to the top management to to look into the performance. That's why one thing what I can observe, for companies that have been successfully doing energy management to manage the energy sustainably, basically they have a few common elements. The first element, basically, they have a very broad awareness among the employees throughout the company. Meaning from the top to the bottom. Meaning from top management to the support staff. And secondly, they have a long-term plan. They have a medium, short, long-term plan. They have a order plan, and they have the targets for each term to be achieved. Alright, this is it. And then thirdly, normally they have a champion. They have a champion who run the show, who run the system, who operate the system, who drive the system to make sure it works. This is often, when it comes to energy management, we often to refer this champion, often they call it energy manager. Energy manager, okay, which is playing the key role. And then, at the same time, they make sure all data collected related to energy, they will analyze. They analyze it, and then they use it to manage it. To manage their energy performance. Meaning they monitor the consumption every month, they monitor the performance every month, they do something about it. They don't just let it after 1 year, some kind of 1 year reporting. And then the third one, the last one, so the fifth one, what they do, they integrate energy management practices into their business operations. Meaning that everyone look into energy as a part of business activity, not just a works of the engineers or work of the facility people. Okay? Because you know why this is important? Because in the energy management system, there are a lot of people involved. If you look here, the ecosystem here, alright, in the system itself, even from the development of the system until the implementation of the system, there are a lot of people here, from the top management to the support staff here. They have the CEOs, they got the CFOs, they have the procurement, they have the finance, they have the accountants, they have the facility engineer, the production engineering, all that. But all that, all them, they must follow certain guide or certain standard, right? That's why we always, if they have common way of doing things, if they refer to certain standard to do that, they will get the result. Otherwise, every of them here, they look energy from different perspective, and often being seen, often being looked, energy often the work of the engineers or facilities. The energy is not, not everyone feeling energy is their responsibilities. But if you ask themselves, if I ask you, if any of you here are not using energy in the company, the difference is that everyone must play their role. That's why the role often being defined properly in the systematic approach. Okay, so I think I'm coming to the last part of my sharing today on this topic. That's why. For the way forward, what's the way forward? Basically, for companies, for organizations, they need to look energy management, look at it as a part of the strategic matters, not just a support matters. Strategic matters. If you don't, they look energy as a project base, after a certain period, then no one will look into that. That's why it's very important to see energy management as a part of the strategic business activity, not just support matters. And last one, okay, energy management might be seen as one of the integrated element in the corporate sustainability practices, not just projects. So basically, by having sustainability management practices, what you can achieve basically, you have the positive impact to your profitability. You give your positive impact to your care to the nature, to the environment directly, because every kilowatt hour you save means that certain kilowatt hour CO2 emission can be avoided. And then finally, of course, show that a company, you are also care about the society as well, in terms of protecting the environment, also protecting the nature. With that, thanks again to IGEM 2020 for inviting Mexico to share this, and thanks again for listening. And I wish all of us to stay safe and then to stay vigilant, because COVID-19 is still out there. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera.
Thank you, Encik Zaini. As the saying goes, you can't manage what you don't measure. Treating energy like how we treat accounting in a company can really help reduce inefficiencies and prevent wastage. And how we go about doing it is by establishing sustainable energy management systems in our organizations. Next up, we have Mr. BK Sinha from the Malaysian Green Building Council. Mr. Sinha has over 35 years of experience in the development and management of environmentally compliant projects, particularly in the waste to renewable energy sector. He has deep-rooted passion for the emergence of truly sustainable developments in this region. Please welcome Mr. BK Sinha with his presentation on how do we achieve low-carbon cities.
A very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this session titled, How Do We Achieve Low-Carbon Cities? Thank you, MGTC, for inviting us, Malaysia Green Building Council, otherwise known as Malaysia GBC. I am BK Sinha, Council Member of Malaysia GBC. If I may touch on a little about us first. We are an established member of the World Green Building Council, also known as World GBC, with member councils like us in more than 70 countries around the globe. Currently, we are at Common Ground in Mid Valley, Kuala Lumpur. We are a membership and sponsorship-based NGO with a vision to instigate change from business as usual to sustainable for the entire supply chain of the building and construction industry. And we urge you to join us in this initiative. The world is facing more unprecedented issues than ever before. A global recession is inevitable following this current pandemic. At the same time, the greatest challenge mankind has ever faced, climate change, is continuing towards the destruction of humanity. And the cause of this destruction to ourselves is us, humans. Yes, we do know who is doing what to accelerate this process. But due to lack of political and business will, powered by short-sightedness and greed, the destruction continues. The time is now. Soon it will be too late. For the survival of our species, we, humans, need to up the ante. I suggest a multi-sectorial, multi-strategic, multi-principled approach is taken. First, a multi-sectorial approach towards lean and optimized consumption and passive technologies applied to energy, waste, water, transport, buildings with passive designs and with net zero objectives, food production. But today, we will focus on the first three. Second, a multi-strategy approach towards decentralized services, including energy, water, and agriculture, sectorial approach factored in at design stage, for buildings, for new buildings, and for asset reinvestment of existing buildings as well. Optimized design for performance using biomimicry, availing green finance as funding, implementing and monitoring performance, and finally, constantly comparing to the baseline and announcing the difference of what has been achieved. Here follows a typical example of a centralized tulip farm, mega in nature, in Holland, bringing along with it many issues that are against nature. Lastly, a multi-principled approach, and by far the most important factor is education. As the citizen of tomorrow must actively change their mindsets to change behavior and overcome this threat to mankind, as we are so capable of in the case of this pandemic. Besides education, the adoption of a circular economy, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and smart city concepts are overarching principles one should accept. The next few slides show a little bit about these principles, and I will not go into details in the interest of time. But if you wish to know more, please join us as a member of Malaysia GBC. Where besides education on energy efficiency and impact, we must also look at passive design, optimized design, and renewable energy, where passive design lowers our energy requirements, whilst optimized design is implementation without over-providing is ensured. And renewable energies result in lower environmental impact, where less is more. As you can see beyond 2019, the red line, the trend is starting to change and it's going downwards, which will hopefully then change the picture below to the one above. Both pictures were taken from exactly the same angle 6 months apart. Next, besides education on waste and the business as usual ills of take, make, and throw behavior, it is absolutely pertinent that we destigmatize waste and look at separation at source as a secret mantra that cannot be compromised. Only separation of organics from non-organics is being taken into consideration. Waste to energy, where renewable energy with multiple carbon abatement possibilities and 100% recycling to achieve a circular economy are strategies we have to look at and apply. Waste is the elephant in the room, and it possesses the highest potential of an untapped resource. Currently, Kuala Lumpur's waste, almost 2,800 tons per day, travels an hour in 40-foot container trucks to Bukit Taga Sanitary Landfill. Never can this be sustainable in the true sense of the word. For waste that gets thrown into drains instead of dustbins, I will not read this slide out, as it makes me feel like a failed species heading towards doom. It is always someone else's problem, we say, but the reality is that it is finding its way into our food and water, and I'm not sure how that can be of any good. This is the type of science-based education we need for all students from age 11 years onwards, if we are to hope for any behavior change of future citizens. Age-old technologies such as biogasification to advanced technologies such as waste to hydrogen exist and should be extensively used. This canal is leading to a river from a pig farm, discharging waste that has very high potential energy. And from the river, it is out to the sea to disturb our precious marine ecology. This is a sample of the work I do. Hopefully, soon we will have one biogas plant running in the country, supplying 1 megawatt of energy to the grid. This is a constructed, aerated treatment wetland, which mimics nature to treat water, and the first one to be deployed at the pig farm biogas project. This is a comparison of energy potential from various renewable sources and non-renewable sources as well. Biogas, as you can see, is better in energy potential than wood, cow dung, or plant residues. It is quite close to hard coal, but it is hardly used as an energy source. The next slide is a simplified diagram showing the biogas processes, one of the byproducts being highly nutritious organic fertilizer. This opens many other healthy options compared to chemical fertilizers. And if we are to take a look at a holistic approach towards zero waste management, we will be collecting used cooking oil for conversion into biodiesel, organic waste, sewage, and garden waste to be biogasified and producing fertilizer, inorganic waste towards recycling. For now, there will remain a small fraction of other waste which can be mitigated using conventional methods. Having extracted the energy from organic waste, we can use it to vastly improve soil health, as this slide shows. It improves soil health at many different levels, as you can read. Our next lowest hanging fruit is, and best friend, is what we need to grow many, many of. They give us benefits that are critical for us to thrive. They take care of urban heat island impacts. They filter urban pollutants. They increase property value, increase urban biodiversity, as well as improve physical and mental health. Lastly, we look at water, and again, besides education, on what entails harnessing it and its ecological footprint, we need to look at how we can conserve it, how we can differentiate its use, grey water versus treated water, where treated water is for human contact and grey water is non-human contact, and how we can reuse it from grey to black water reuse, and how we can recharge it into the ground after we use it, preferring recharging to surface runoff, which will lead straight into the rivers and into the sea. Here are the sources of water we can get in Malaysia. Surface water, which runs into rivers, lakes, and the sea. Groundwater, rainwater harvesting, waste, grey, and sewage water. You know what Singapore does with that. Atmospheric water or dew water drawn from the high humidity in this equatorial region. And the symbiotic behavior of nature to bring about a perfect hydraulic cycle is often disrupted by humans, and the negative impact of which is felt only by humans. Recognizing that it is a precious resource to support life, we have devised many strategies to stop surface water runoff. But how many developments apply them, and why not? Perhaps this is food for thought. This is how we use treated water, which is generally subsidized. Is subsidy a good thing on the long run? Have a look at what large percentages we use for toilets and what water we lose leaking from pipes and taps. This slide is self-explanatory. Would you not agree? Our neighbors have clever schemes to cause mindset changes and entrepreneurship. In the Philippines, renewable energy lending program, microfinances, solar power for small roofs on houses. The Kisakon Bank in Thailand ensures that all three pillars of sustainability, social, environmental, and economic, are addressed equitably and equally when giving out microloans to carry out green and environmentally compliant projects. On our own, we have the Low Carbon Cities Framework and Assessment System. In fact, I participated to co-author this. But what measurable impact has it brought compared to our total emissions? We really don't know. If we do the same things, how can we ever expect different results? We cannot. Here is a picture of what is to be, and if this is true, will the environment suffer even more? With the economy improving or projected to improve in 2021, can we ensure that all development is sustainable? For sure we can. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I leave you to contemplate on our common future, our children's future, and our grandchildren's future. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. B.K. Sinha. Such a simple presentation title, but as you just saw, it is full of information, interesting ideas, and examples for all of us to follow. It was interesting that Mr. Sinha ended with a quote: "We cannot become what we want to be by remaining what we are." It is all down to each and every one of us to make the right choices and decisions in our day-to-day lives as we strive towards a low-carbon future. Last but not least, we have Ms. Juanita Lourdes, who is the Sales and Marketing Manager of Green RE under the Real Estate Housing and Developers Association, REDA. She has held various sustainability roles over the past 12 years, and she is now actively promoting and raising awareness on the green built environment. Please welcome Ms. Juanita Lourdes with a presentation on the business case for green buildings in Malaysia.
Hi everyone, I'm Juanita, and on behalf of Green RE, I will be presenting on Beyond the Business Case for Green Buildings in Malaysia. Firstly, we would like to thank MGTC for having us part of their LCCF talks this last quarter of the year. And yes, I would first like to start with some statistics from the 2019 Global Status Report by UNEP in my next few slides. And so, according to United Nations, the world's population is expected to reach 9.8 billion by 2050, a 2 billion increase from the current world population, and nearly 70% of this population is projected to live in urban areas. And of that, 90% of this increase will take place in Asia and Africa. Considering the projected urbanization, it is imperative that upcoming cities are sustainable, since infrastructure built today will be in place for the next 30 to 100 years. And this first graph shows you the projected or the trend of floor area versus population, energy usage, and resulting emissions. In these two pie charts, you will see the impact of various industries and their correlating energy emissions. And in the report, it says that cities account for between 67 to 76% of global energy use and up to 76% of global GHG emissions. The building sector is responsible for about 1/3 of global energy consumption. Thus, green buildings and cities will be key to meeting decarbonization targets and limiting global warming to below 2 Celsius. And the report also highlights 8 priority areas for this course, and it includes urban planning, new buildings, existing building retrofits, building operations, systems, materials, and of course, resilience and clean energy. A major source of rising energy use and emissions by the global building stock is electricity, the use of which has increased more than 19% since 2010, generated mainly from coal and natural gas. Hence, it is crucial that clean and renewable sources of energy are accessible. And of course, green certification, we highlight the use of passive and low energy designs more widely in building construction. And this graph, it shows how certain sectors you can see a downward trend, as in energy use in appliances and cooking and water heating and lighting. However, due to the expanding floor area in hot climates such as Malaysia, the cooling demand is increasing. As better building envelopes are crucial to reduce energy use for cooling, building codes must remain a policy priority along with technology efficient improvements. And it's beyond doubt that green buildings have a multitude of benefits. Various studies have shown this globally. And I would like to highlight here a recent study published in the Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health on COVID-19 scenario in Italy. They found a strong association between poor housing and moderate to severe depressive symptoms. And it also confirmed that an interdisciplinary approach involving urban planning, public mental health, environmental health, epidemiology, and sociology is needed to investigate the effects of the built environment and the mental outcome of occupants to integrate housing and building policies centered on population well-being, especially during pandemic situations. And in Malaysia, well, despite the cutbacks and re-evaluation of major projects, Malaysia's residential and non-residential building sector is still expected to grow in the next couple of decades. However, currently less than 1% of Malaysia's building stock is green certified in comparison with Singapore and London, which are approaching 40 to 60% respectively. And currently, completed green buildings stand at less than 200. And this includes all certification in Malaysia. You could say that the green certification industry in Malaysia is still between an embryonic and early growth stage, hence why there's immense opportunity for various stakeholders in the industry. And this is where we come in. So Green RE, which stands for Green Real Estate, is Malaysia's leading green building certification rating tool. We were set up by REDA back in 2013. REDA is the Real Estate and Housing Developers Association, which represent around 80 to 90% of the private developers in Malaysia. And we were set up to drive sustainability in Malaysia's real estate industry. We also conduct training programs and awareness drives to increase the market penetration of sustainable real estate. And we are fully supported and recognized by the Malaysian government and local authorities. Hence why certified projects under Green RE can qualify for income tax allowances and incentives under MIDA and MOF. Our rating tools are based on Singapore's BCA Green Mark, and we've included our MS standards, our MS 2680, MS 1525, UBBL 1984, and we've produced a locally developed tropical rating tool. And it covers a multitude of applications. The table on the right shows you the list of currently available rating tools, and the list is ever expanding together with our technical team. We add on new rating tools every year. Currently, we have a portfolio of over 200 registered projects covering 150 million square feet across Malaysia. With energy being a major focus, with most sustainable reports and also quoting the earlier UNEP report, our Green RE rating tool places importance on the energy efficiency of buildings. In part 1 of our criteria, we look at things like OTTV, RTTV, daylighting, and we place a big role on passive design as well. And so these are the 6 pillars that's covered by our rating tool. Energy, of course, water efficiency, carbon emission, indoor environmental quality, environmental protection, and also other green innovative features. And the table on the right would show you the cross-section of the other criteria available in our tools. And just before I wrap up my presentation, I would like to share with you a survey result of a study carried out by Green RE and Radar Malaysia on developers in the first quarter of the year. We found that one of the major concerns by developers on resulting in a low uptake of green building certification in Malaysia is cost. And in terms of cost of green materials, consultancy fees, and even the lack of government incentives. So we're hoping that working together with the Malaysian government, local authorities, as well as the green consultants in Malaysia, would be able to increase the awareness of the importance of green buildings, and also provide solutions on how we can achieve government goals in terms of LCCF and also carbon reduction. And yes, so thank you from us from Green RE, and I'd like to end this presentation by saying that ultimately, in the dogma of sustainability, green buildings and green utilities will have to be self-sufficient. Multifunctionality is critical when developing buildings for the future. And since it will be around for the next 100 years, it has to benefit our fragile environment and our occupants. What may seem like a unique feature in a green building now will have to be a norm in the not so distant future. We will need to evolve from the mindset of what can we do to minimize impacts and move towards pushing boundaries to completely neutralize the impact and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Juanita Lodes. It is fitting to know that green buildings does make business sense, and that every new building could and should be a green building. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our webinar session for today. To all our participants, thank you very much for joining. We hope that you have gained some insight, knowledge, and inspiration from the presentations that we have had today. To all our speakers, thank you very much for your participation and your willingness to share your knowledge and insights with others. We cannot achieve this goal of a low-carbon future all by ourselves. We need the collective efforts of government, the private sector, NGOs, associations, and us as individuals working together, sharing ideas, helping each other come up with solutions in order to create the low-carbon future that we desire. If you have any questions, do visit the Low Carbon Cities virtual booth and speak to us there. Till we meet again, thank you all and have a good day.